DeSanto Propane is 4 generations strong as a trustworthy, family-owned business with unmatched customer service. Go online at DeSantoPropane.com for more info or call toll-free at 1-800-752-4574 today. Since 1937, the difference has been DeSanto Propane.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to Against the Boards. I'm your host, Chamberlain Bauder, here in the freezing cold of Rochester, New York, to take another week to talk about hockey and lacrosse in Western New York. Cold one outside today. Sorry for any, blips as we go. And it's just not a particularly great week out in Rochester, but it is a great week when it comes to sports going on right now. Big time home week for the Amerks. They played at home on yesterday against the Bears. They'll play the Bears again on Friday. They got another game at home on Wednesday and then Friday next week, as well as they close it out on the 6th against the Thunderbirds at home. Coming off of a little bit of a 2-game skid right now. They were able to top the Utica Comets 3-0 over the weekend. That was a big needed boost for them. And then now, though, against the Bears team that they played yesterday in a tough performance, 3-1 loss, they're going to need to bounce back and play them again tomorrow. So we'll ultimately see how that one goes. Of course, the key thing with that, a lot of reinforcements not around for the Amerks right now. Zach Jones just got called up with Jacob Bryson going down to IR. And realistically, he's been the best offensive player that they've had all season. 37 points from the defenseman is top 20 in the AHL, but of course, inactive for the AHL right now as he's been pulled up to Buffalo. And a couple guys really have been pulled up to Buffalo. This team has just been absolutely fleeced by the Sabres. You try to think about a nice way to put it because you love that these guys are getting these opportunities to go up. But at the end of the day, if you're an Amerks only fan, this is not fun to watch at all. Really, in any way, shape, or form, given how awesome was it that the Sabres beat the Toronto Maple Leafs 7-4 last time out? Pretty sick, in my opinion. I enjoyed it, but I can't imagine that a random Rochester fan who's more looking forward to the Wednesday game against the Hershey Bears is going to very much enjoy seeing all of the guys be gone, pretty much, from the team. Definitely makes for a more interesting situation, and definitely some interesting injury situations right now in Buffalo anyways. Alex Lyon moves to IR, so right now they're kind of back and forth between Lucan and Ellis. Just makes it for a bit more of a conversation. Of course, Devon Levi right now is, when it comes to games played, is leading the AHL in goalies. Unfortunately, when you have more games played than most people, that usually doesn't help out your stats. So not necessarily sitting anywhere near the top in terms of goals against average. Right now, he's about 17th in the AHL in save percentage. But on the note of Devon Levi, before we shift things and send it over to Spencer, we've got to talk about Sabres and Amerks in the news because, oh my goodness, what irony for the world of hockey of just, you're not mainstream enough for small market news organizations to entirely know who you are just from a face. Devon Levi, during the Rochester snowstorm, was out with his buddies for a walk and got caught by News 8 in Rochester. And Rochester resident Devon Levi told everyone that they should stay home and stay with their families. Definitely go find the clip. It's all over Instagram and social media. Then meanwhile, about a week before, I believe, from what the looks of it were, Spectrum News in Buffalo was doing a segment about infant swim classes. And whose infant was the demo for this video? Alex Tuck. So Alex Tuck's byline, his lower third when he was on Spectrum News, just said, Dad, Alex Tuck. Gotta love the Sabres making the news for non-Sabre things. It is kind of entertaining, to say the least, right now. But nonetheless, they match up with Hershey once again. on Friday. Then it'll be Wednesday and Friday at home next week for the Amerks. Meanwhile, Rochester Knighthawks, a home-and-home against the Vancouver Warriors. They'll take them on at Seager and Shortino Field at the Blue Cross Arena on Saturday, and then head to Rogers Arena next week on February 7th, day before the Super Bowl. Get some nice late-night lacrosse. That game is going to be at 10 p.m. on February 7th. Of course, in Rochester, it'll still be that 7 o'clock start. Christian Del Bianco, arguably the best goalie in the league right now. The Vancouver Warriors have allowed the fewest goals in the league through 6 games. Both the Knighthawks and Vancouver tied up for third right now in the NLL. But that's going to do it for me. And without further ado, we'll pass it over to Spencer. Big thanks to my producer, Paul Russo, for getting us up and running. You're listening to Against the Boards.
And to start the Knighthawks portion, we are going to go over Week 9 in the NLL. Started off Friday night, Philadelphia hosting the San Diego Seals. San Diego looked calm, cool, and collective in this one. Went down big early, and then rattled back a big-time comeback and got a 9-7 win in Philly. The second and final Friday night game was between the Vancouver Warriors and the Ottawa Black Bears. This was the TSN game of the week. Vancouver had this one from the beginning on to the end of the game, a 12-8 decisive win for the Warriors, and Vancouver will now be headed to Rochester this weekend. First one on Saturday was a barn burner in Toronto as the Rock hosted the Georgia Swarm, and this one went into overtime. Toronto had a lead late in this game. Georgia came back, tied it up, forced overtime. Brett Dobson was unreal. Yet again, it was Troy Holochuk in net for the Rock, as Nick Rose went down last week with an injury. Fourth and final game of the weekend, the Colorado Mammoth hosted the Oshawa Firewolves. Colorado had this one from the beginning on, just like Vancouver did in their Friday night game. The Mammoth won this one 15-11. I expected that one to be much more low-scoring, but you never know what's going to happen in the NLL. Coming into Week 10, the Rochester Knighthawks lead the National Lacrosse League in goals per game, with 81 goals through 6 games. The Knighthawks will be facing a very talented Vancouver Warriors team this weekend. 7 o'clock start, Saturday, January 31st, at Seager and Shortino Field at the Blue Cross Arena. As we mentioned last week, the Knighthawks are coming off a disappointing loss to the Toronto Rock and will look for a big bounce-back victory against the Warriors. In net for Rochester, it will be number 49, the King of Hearts, Rylan Hartley. Hartley has had a phenomenal start to the season, minus the one outlier game against the Colorado Mammoth in Denver. Hartley has had 3 games north of an 80% save percentage, which is unheard of in the NLL, including the domination in San Diego in the first game of the season, where he had an 89.4 save percentage. Now we're going to go more in-depth into this Vancouver Warriors squad on offense, led by number 45, Keegan Ball, who has had an unbelievable start to the season, averaging more than 2 goals a game here to start the season. When looking at the coaching staff, there's a lot of familiar faces. Obviously, you have Kurt Malowski, the head coach, who is also the GM for this Warriors squad. Mouser played 6 seasons with the original Rochester Knighthawks from 1998 up to 2003. Another familiar face on this Warriors coaching staff is a former goaltender, Tyler Richards. He was in net in the 2013 NLL championship game where the Rochester Knighthawks took down the Washington Stealth to win their second straight NLL title. There's one very familiar last name on this Warriors team, number 39, Connor O'Toole, the son of Nighthawks legendary goaltender Pat O'Toole, who is also on the coaching staff. As we mentioned earlier, the Warriors are coming off a 12-8 win against the Ottawa Black Bears. Vancouver is sitting at 4-2, the same record as the Rochester Knighthawks. Warriors have played 2 common opponents in the Colorado Mammoth and San Diego Seals, who they both lost to. Rochester is 1-1 against those 2. The biggest key to the game for the Knighthawks is going to be how can you figure out Vancouver goaltender number 35, Christian Del Bianco. Del Bianco has been one of the best goalies in the league for a while now. He was a big part of their second half success once he was traded to Vancouver from Calgary last season. Vancouver has a very strong defense, and then when you match that up with a guy like Christian Del Bianco, it is not an easy outing for the Knighthawks. The game against Vancouver this weekend is just the first of two back-to-back games and back-to-back weekends these two teams will face off. Next weekend, the Knighthawks will be in Vancouver to take on the Warriors on the second half of this back-to-back. This is another one of those games, along with the game earlier this season against Buffalo, that the Knighthawks have to win in order to prove themselves as a top contender in the NLL. Firmly believe this Knighthawks team is better than the Warriors, and it's going to be a big test this Saturday. Knighthawks have been flipping out Graydon Hogg and Brad McCully in the lineup. I think it'll be very interesting to see which way Mike Hazen goes for this one. I think with the physicality that Vancouver brings on their defense, it would be a good decision to bring out Brad McCully for this one and give Graydon Hogg the night off. But then on the flip side, Graydon Hogg has been very productive this season. In 4 games, he's got 3 goals and 4 assists for 7 points. And he brings an extra level of effort to the offense on the left side that is needed. Hopefully within these next few games, Knighthawks alternate captain and transition man Ryland Reese will be coming back from injury. Reese was present and participating in morning shoot-around prior to the game against the Toronto Rock. Think he's getting close to his return, and that'd be a big get as we get towards the middle of the season for the Rochester Knighthawks. Connor Fields leads the team with 20 goals through 6 games. The reigning MVP just continues to show why he is arguably the best player across the National Lacrosse League. Ryan Smith has had a little bit of a slow start for his standard, only 12 goals through 6 games. I expect him to turn it up in these next couple of games. He had a good outing in the playoff loss against the Warriors last year, so maybe he'll continue. Just another friendly reminder to follow Knighthawks Network on Instagram for all NLL updates and Knighthawks content. Next, we're going to go look ahead at the Week 10 slate across the NLL. 2 Friday games and then 5 on Saturday. First off, Friday night, the Saskatchewan Rush are headed to Calgary to take on the Roughnecks. Saskatchewan has been one of, if not the best team in the NLL so far this season. I expect the Rush to take this one. Second and final game of Friday night, the Philadelphia Wings are heading out west to take on the San Diego Seals. These two teams battled it out last week, with San Diego taking the win on the road, and I expect them this time to take the win at home. First game of the Saturday slate, the Halifax Thunderbirds are hosting the Georgia Swarm. Earlier on this season, people were looking at this game and saying, oh, the Halifax rout is incoming. But that's not the case anymore. Georgia has played really good recently and have put themselves in the middle of the playoff picture right now. Brett Dobson has been unbelievable. He has had one of the best starts to his season in NLL history in between the pipes. Halifax is coming off a loss to the Colorado Mammoth where they just could not get anything going offensively. Mammoth completely shut down their offense, and Colorado's Jack Hanna had another big day. We talked earlier about the Knighthawks hosting the Warriors. It's going to be a big day for the Knighthawks. They are honoring the military veterans at this one at the Blue Cross Arena. Ryan Smith and company are going to have a big game in order to get the Knighthawks a much-needed win before heading out west next weekend. Next up, Toronto is hosting the Ottawa Black Bears. Now, this is a tricky one because Toronto has looked good in games, and then they have looked very bad like they did last weekend. I expect Ottawa to come out hungry after losing last week to the Warriors at home. Ottawa and Toronto not a very far distance from one another, so it'll be interesting to see how the crowd acts in this one. I do think the veteran presence that Toronto has on that back end is going to help them in this one, even with Nick Rose being out. I expect the Rock to win this one. Next up, we have the Buffalo Bandits heading out west to take on the Colorado Mammoth in Denver. Colorado has been on an absolute tear lately, just dominating teams left and right. I expect this to be another trend in that stretch, as Buffalo has not looked good the last few games and have struggled to find anything offensively. Pair that with going against Dylan Ward, it could make for a long night for the Buffalo Bandits. Final game of the weekend, the Oshawa Firewolves are headed to Vegas to take on the Desert Dogs. 10 p.m. start for those of us on the East Coast. I expect a high-scoring game again from this Vegas offense. Oshawa's offense has looked much better the last few weeks, but I don't think they can handle the firepower on that Vegas offense. Mitch Jones, Chris Kluche, and Chase Frazier, among others. Expect Vegas to win this one in the end to cap off the weekend. Thank you all for listening to this episode of Against the Boards.